Greetings class, Dr. Williams here with this Chapter 1 video, Introduction to Managerial Economics. So these videos are sort of a substitute for a face-to-face class where I would talk about Chapter 1 and we would discuss it. They're obviously not as good as being face-to-face, but these notes that you'll be seeing on the screen you can download from our website and print them out if you want to do that. And I should mention I have this tablet PC, so I can draw. I will occasionally draw or do something besides just talk over the screen. So the course is really managerial economics with a global sort of flavor to it. And of course economics is a huge social science that covers all kinds of topics. Managerial economics is a discipline within the social science of economics. And what does it do? It employs concepts, tools, and techniques from economics to help managers make better business decisions. Here are a few decisions that just popped into my head where economics techniques can help. What price to charge for a product? Of course, that's a question you also can look at from a marketing perspective. What quantity of product to produce? How to produce the product at the lowest possible cost? That's a topic you could also look at from a point of view of something like operations management or supply chain management. How to react to a change in a competitor's price. And there's all kinds of other decisions. There's concepts from economics that can be applied to these types of decisions. Now, managerial economics is one tool in the toolbox. You learn so many disciplines when you get an MBA, and economics is just one of them. And it's not a universal tool. You know, it's like a screwdriver. It shouldn't be used to hammer in a nail, that kind of thing. Don't forget the other tools in your toolbox, including accounting, finance, management, marketing, and practical business experience. Now, economists try to keep things as simple as possible when it comes to managerial economics. The goal of the firm, they say, is to maximize total profits. And technically, it's over the life of the business. Often in the theoretical world, they assume that the firm has an infinite lifespan and it projects its profits over that lifespan. And you take the discounted present value of all those profits and you're trying to maximize that value. Obviously in the real world, the closer the time period is to now, the more important the profits are, because that's how publicly traded corporations anyway tend to function. Now in finance, they take a similar look at the firm. They say maximize the value of the firm. And that's usually the sort of stock market value if it's a publicly traded company. Well, the thing is, the more profitable a firm is, the more valuable it tends to be, at least over the long run. Now, we do have firms in the short run that don't have any profits. Even Netflix doesn't have much profits. Or you can take Uber, which is losing hundreds of millions of dollars every 3 months. They still have value, but the theory is eventually they'll turn it around and have positive profits. So this is a bit of a simplification. Firms can have different short-run goals, for example, to increase market share and things like that. But when you look at business decisions from this standpoint, it gives you a target. Don't forget the definition of total profits. You have this in many different courses, but sometimes people get confused with the terminology. So total profits is what the owners get to keep. They bring money in when they sell the product. That's the total sales revenue. And then they have to pay out all these different costs of producing and selling the product. Whatever's left over is the total profits. And one reason it's a little confusing to students sometimes is because you see this term used, these synonyms for profits, earnings. So in finance they might call profits earnings. In accounting they might call profits income. So those are synonyms. Profits, earnings, income, all mean the same thing. Some students tend to confuse profits with revenue. It's a big mistake. Revenue is just the money from the sales. The firm doesn't get to keep all of that. In fact, the average firm in the U.S. only keeps 3% of their revenue as profit. Most people on the street think that the average firm keeps 30 to 40% of their revenue as profit. But it's more like 3%. In other words, even a huge company like Walmart, for every $100 of sales, every $100 of stuff that they sell, they have to pay about $97 in costs. So the profits are only about $3. So the goal is to maximize total profits. Now, what are some concepts useful to business managers? Well, economics is really the application of logic to the economy, and with the idea of having some goal in mind. And so this concept called benefit cost analysis, which by the way is also called cost benefit analysis depending who's talking about it. Any action that a person takes has both benefits and costs, and you want to have the benefits exceed the costs by sort of the greatest amount. In terms of business decisions, the benefit to a decision might be that it adds to the firm's revenue, and a cost might be that it adds to the firm's costs. And so when the benefits of a decision exceed the costs, the profits go up, and that furthers the goal of the firm to maximize its profits. Now, one thing that's very tricky is that decisions have consequences into the future. And so you have to try to forecast the benefits and costs. They're uncertain. And so a lot of economics has to do with forecasting. Statistical analysis is one of the tools that economists use, one of the quantitative tools, to try to forecast the benefits and costs of decisions. And so the point is, a firm has a whole bunch of options of what to do, and some of those options are mutually exclusive. And the point of the firm is to choose the actions that have the highest amount of benefits relative to the costs, and that will maximize the total profits. So think about a pricing decision. That's one of the basic decisions you have to make whenever you want to sell a product. How much are you going to charge for it? We were just at the 99-cent store, me and my two boys. First I took them to Wendy's for a delicious gourmet dinner, and then we went to the 99-cent store to do some highfalutin shopping. And the weird thing about the 99-cent store is that most things they have are not 99 cents. Most of them seem to be $1.99. Some of them are $2.99. They do have a few things for 99 cents. But anyway, they all have that .99 on the end. Of course, that's a psychological kind of trick to make you think it's cheaper than it really is. But think about if a firm like that is considering raising the price of the product. That's an option. That's always an option a firm has. To raise the price or even to lower the price. But think about this case of raising the price. What's the benefit? Higher price per unit sold will increase the profit per unit sold. You think about a donut shop. Maybe their donuts are currently 50 cents each, and maybe they cost 40 cents to make, let's say, and they're having a 10-cent profit per donut. And they're thinking, well, if I raise the price to 60 cents, each donut will bring in more profit, an extra 10 cents per donut. That's the benefit. But the problem is when you raise the price to 60 cents, maybe people will look at the price and they'll think, well, that's too expensive for me. I'm not buying a donut anymore. So fewer units will be sold. So the donuts that are no longer sold will be a loss of profit. So you got to weigh the benefit of higher profit per unit with the cost of lower amounts of units sold. Now, as we'll see, it turns out for some firms, especially firms that don't have a lot of competition, it sometimes makes sense to restrict the quantity produced in order to keep the price high and profits high. So a business with less competition would tend to have a higher price and a smaller quantity than a business that has a lot of competition. I was thinking about an example on my way home from the 99-cent store, and I was thinking about my favorite artist, Britney Spears, And suppose she's playing in a stadium that holds 15,000 people. But Warren Buffett, it happens to be in town. And he loves Britney Spears. And he's willing to pay $1 billion to see a Britney Spears concert. $1 billion. Well, what price should you charge for the tickets if you're Britney Spears? The answer is $1 billion. You'll get all that money from Warren Buffett. Now you'll only sell one ticket, and there'll be 14,999 empty seats. But that's the price per ticket that would maximize profits, because Warren Buffett is willing to pay $1 billion. Now, if Warren Buffett's not in town, you might want to charge $100 for the ticket instead. But that's kind of the idea. So you have to understand your customers when you're making the pricing decision. That's just one example. Now, what's another concept from economics useful to managers? Well, there's this weird and sort of common sense saying in economics is that people respond to incentives, and you sort of can't violate these rules. If you raise the price of a product, people will buy less. If you cut people's pay, they might quit. If you raise the interest rate on a loan, you're less likely to get customers that will take out loans at that interest rate. Those are sort of the idea. People respond to incentives. And so it should be obvious that before a firm implements policy, or it should figure out how people will respond. And they may not respond the way you yourself would respond, and they may not respond in a way that you will like. But it's important to try to figure out how people will respond to incentives before you make a change. I have a couple of examples what I got off the internets. Recently, United Airlines, this is from the New York Times, by the way, from last week. They decided they were going to get rid of their standard bonus and instead would have a lottery and give nothing to most of the workers and award lavish prizes to a few lucky winners. Now, I'm not sure who in the upper management had this idea, but they obviously didn't run it by their employees. I mean, isn't that an obvious thing to do? Before you change how people get paid, you ask them whether they would like the new way or not. The thing is, apparently most of the workers hated it, right? So they, after a couple of days, they canceled it. So people respond to incentives. Before you do something, think about how the people will respond. Maybe even ask them. How about that? This shows the isolation, I think, of some of the decision makers in a big corporation. Not only with the workers, but perhaps also with the customers. I mean, do these United Airlines people in the C-suite, do they fly coach on their own airline much? Maybe they should. And they'd see how their policies affect their customers too. And here's another thing that my son was talking about. My son is 13, the older one, and he plays video games. And he talks about how a lot of these video games are trying to make more money by having these like loot, they're called loot crates or loot boxes within the video games. And this is popular in phone video games, like Angry Birds or Candy Crush. You run out of lives and then you can pay $1.99 and get enough points to get 10 more lives or something like that. So they're trying to do this same thing in the console video games, like Xbox and PlayStation. And apparently it's not going over very well because their most loyal customers hate it. So this is another example of a company implementing something. Why didn't they ask the gamers first? Why didn't they ask the gamers? I mean, isn't that an obvious thing to do? So people respond to incentives, and not often in the way, not always in the way that you'll think. Now, what's another economics concept useful to managers? Well, there's a concept called opportunity cost, which I like to think of as opportunity lost. Many decisions are mutually exclusive. When you do one, you can't do a different one. Uh, and there are also things that don't cost money that you use in a business that are mutually exclusive. These are called implicit costs. Resources that a firm uses that it doesn't pay money for, but which have a good alternate use. Now, what am I talking about? Well, I play golf. At least, well, I used to play golf a lot. Now that I have had kids, I don't play as much as I used to. But golf courses take a lot of land. And there's a course I used to play a while back now called Tree Line. It wasn't the greatest course, but it was pretty cheap. And it was pretty fast to get around to. It was one of those courses where you can play quickly. And they always seem crowded and busy, and plenty of people playing. But it's not there anymore. It's not there. You see, the biggest cost to running a golf course in a metro area like Houston may not be money you have to pay out for anything. It's the fact that you're tying up, say, 100 acres of land. The average golf course is between 80 and 100 acres. Treeline, I think, was less than that. It might have been 70 or 60 or something like that. But think about all the houses that could be built on that land. And a lot of developers. This was a course near the, well, not too far from the Northwest Houston Center, a couple miles north. It's a prime area for housing. So what ended up happening is they sold to the developers. So they might have been bringing in a lot of cash at that golf course. But the fact that they sold the land for millions of dollars tells you that was the biggest cost. Here's the it's in Tomball. Here's the this is where the course used to be. I recognize this tree. I hit a golf ball right there one time. But so the biggest cost of running a golf course is not the money you pay the workers or the weed killer or something like that. It's the fact that all that land is so valuable, you could sell it and make a lot of money. Another concept from economics, this term sunk costs are sunk costs. Now, a sunk cost is something they talk about more in chapter 2, and we'll talk about it more. But it's the cost you've already paid that you cannot recover. And once it's gone, it's gone. And it should be irrelevant to what you decide to do with a future decision. The Joint Strike Fighter, the F-35, has cost way more than they thought. It's in production now and is actually in use, at least a little bit. It's not performing as well as they thought. But they've spent a lot of money already. I believe they spent $100 billion. Yeah, $100 billion. So some politicians say, well, we've spent so much already. We have to keep going. We've spent so much already, we have to keep going. Now that doesn't make any sense at all. Because what they've spent is gone, whether they keep going or stop. It's similar to someone who's owned a stock and it's gone down, and they say, well, I can't sell because I've lost so much money. I have to wait till it comes back up. But it's irrelevant what's happened already. What you should be concerned about for the F-35 fighter is what are the benefits versus the costs in the future. What you should be concerned about with any stock you own, no matter whether you're losing money or you're gaining money, is what's the probability it's going to go up versus the probability it's going to go down. And that's it, right? if you're in the middle of a long-term project, this is where you can become attached to money you've already spent. But you have to let it go, like the song says, and only think about the future. Look forward, not backward. A long time ago, uh, when I was in undergrad, I had a job at Digital Equipment Corporation. In the summer, I was working in the computer tape library doing something or other, and they had just installed a new phone system in the building. The building probably had about 800 or 900 people, something like that. A big building. They were doing engineering and stuff in there. And this is when they first were trying to have the phones run over the computer network. And this was all new back. This is a long time ago. This is pretty standard now. But this was like a brand new phone system, and digital was known for its cutting edge networking, and they tried to have the phones run over the network, and they never worked. We couldn't call anybody. We'd have to run over, down the hall. And we had a meeting one day, all hands on deck meeting. There were so many people that there was no room big enough in the building. We had it outside in the back. There was a kind of a grassy area in the back. And the head of the building had his PA system, and he said, "We are going to keep using this phone system. We've spent so much money already. I'm going to keep at it until it's fixed. So don't be complaining. We're not going back to the old phone system. We spent so much money on it." See, that's the kind of thinking that's wrong. The Digital Equipment Corporation is not around anymore, maybe because of that kind of thinking. It doesn't matter how much you've already spent. Does the phone system have any chance of working in the future? And how much will you have to spend on it in the future? Look forward, not backward. Now, to test your understanding of this looking forward, not backward idea, I've created a fake case which I call a movie pseudo case. It's a short little thing about two different movies that are in the middle of being produced, and you can decide whether to keep producing the movie, finish it up and release it to the public, or to abandon the movie, cut your losses, and try something else. So this is not a graded thing, but try it out and see if you can pass the looking forward, not backward test. Now, one more thing that economists use quite a bit is quantitative analysis. Economics in the mainstream, once you get to the graduate level, is massively quantitative. And again, I mentioned in the introductory video, sometimes when you take managerial economics at the graduate level, it's just a battle with the math. If we all were great at math in the class, we could teach the class like that. But what I don't want it to devolve into is, well, I'm stuck on this math technique, so I can't even get to the concept. So we're going to do quantitative analysis, but we're not going to be sort of fixated on it. And when we have to do it, we'll do it, and you'll see how it's important. But keep in mind, as an MBA, you would not be doing the type of quantitative analysis that an economist with a PhD would be doing. Most economists who work for businesses have a PhD, or at least a master's in economics, and they would have a great deal of quantitative work. It's like someone in finance. If you're an MBA, you wouldn't have the kind of preparation someone with a master's degree in finance would have. The idea in this course, it's like kind of like you're a general contractor. That's the idea to me about an MBA. You're a general contractor, like you're in charge of say home building. You have to understand how a house is built. You have to understand, for example, how the tiling is put up in the bathroom. But you hire someone to actually do the tiling. You can tell whether he or she is doing a good job or not, but you're not really that great at it. You let the expert do it, and you're kind of the overseer. And that's the way an MBA should relate to economics. You understand it. You can understand reports by economists. You can talk to them. But when you actually get to doing the economic analysis, the quantitative work, you leave it to them because they're the experts. So that's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget you can find the notes on e-courses. You can print them out if you want. Till next time, Professor Williams is saying, have a good day.